Hello and welcome students. In this video we are going to also talk about the concept of end behavior like the last video. In the last video we talked about y equals positive x squared. This time we are looking at y equals negative x squared. So the leading coefficient is -1. What is the leading coefficient? It is actually the number that is right next to the variable which has the degree. So the degree of the polynomial here is 2, or the highest power is 2. What does that mean on the graph? On the graph it means at most it can cross the x-axis at two places. So this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. Now this is an even function. Remember we talked about even functions. What are even functions? Whose highest power or degree is an even number. So here the degree is an even number, and also these functions, this function is actually symmetrical about the y-axis. That means as I am drawing an axis through the y line, it is actually dividing the graph into two equal parts. So we need to look at the end behavior. What is the meaning of end behavior? That means what is on the left hand side. Let us label this is the left hand side and this is the right hand side. So we are looking at basically how is the function behaving on the left hand side and right hand side. So we write that answer down. So remember we talked about that we do not write down the words as down and down for end behavior in math. We write it down in a little bit of fancy mathematical way. So we write down the end behavior on the left hand side and right hand side for the graph, because there are two areas of the graph that we can study here. So left and right. So as we can see on the left hand side, let us take a look at the left hand side of the graph. What is happening as the x values are becoming increasing more and more, or rather I should say decreasing, because it's going towards negative infinity. So as the x values are decreasing or moving towards a negative infinity, what is happening to the y values? So you can see that the y values are also decreasing because it's also moving towards negative infinity. So I can say that as x tends to negative infinity, y also tends to negative infinity, because we can actually graph the given function and look at its end behavior or study the end behavior. Now let us move to the right hand side of the graph and let us take a look at the right hand side of the graph. So on the right hand side of the graph is this piece here, and as you can see the graph is moving towards this side. That means it is increasing or going towards positive infinity. Then what is happening to the y values? The graph is going down because the leading coefficient is a negative number. It's going to be an upside down graph. And then what is happening to the y values? As you can see, this is the y-axis. So the y values are also decreasing. So we write down the end behavior on the right hand side is as x tends to positive infinity, the y values tend to also a negative infinity like the left hand side. So this is basically how we write down the end behavior in math form. Remember to always graph your function. Anytime you're confused, you can just graph your function on your calculator also, and then you can study the end behavior from there.